Yeah, welcome everybody. I'm trying to think if I had an interesting week last week, so I've been a little preoccupied and I can't think anything new happening unless anybody has anything. Uh, Walter, or anybody else has anything else that's happening in the area?
Yeah, nothing that I can recall at this moment. Many of you probably know that former Commissioner Earl Flanagan passed away a couple of weeks ago, Memorial Day, I believe, and we had his memorial services on yesterday, which I thought was very nice and well attended. Earl served this community very, very well, and some of you obviously worked very closely with him. So he would be thoroughly missed, and institutional knowledge that has left us. But so just continue to keep his family in prayer, if you will. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Walter. Well said.
Nicely said.
Anybody have anything else happening? I can't really think anything that was new. I'll reiterate again, July 1st are the workhouse fireworks. Hope to see everybody there in attendance. Always a great show. But that's about all I have. So I'm not sure who I'm turning it over to, Steve. Is it the consultants?
It'll be Kate with
Okay.
Renaissance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if you can share there we go. And Kate, if you want to share and kick things off.
All right. Hold on here. Let me get my slide deck up. So I guess good news. I think we're coming to close to the end, at least with our work in terms of the vision. Let me bring up the slideshow here. So what we've been working on is just really kind of refining and adding to the visualization so that we've got something we can share with the public. As you all know, we've got a public meeting now scheduled for, first of all, can everyone see my screen? Yes, okay,
Yes.
Let's put it in presentation mode real quick.
Yep.
We are, oops, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And are you seeing it with the,
Yes.
okay, let me change that.
Yeah, put it like a full screen. There we go.
That's
Are we good?
perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, so we are gearing up because what we've done is we've basically taken all the input and kind of built on what we heard from you last time in terms of how do we best visualize this vision and what are the component parts. And so we've been working on those visualizations for really this upcoming open house event, which is scheduled on July 15th. I think I've got that right, on a Saturday. And we are wanting to do this as an open house event where we'll have large exhibit boards and we'll be there, staff will be there to really just let people come up and talk to us and give us reactions. We'll probably have sticky notes and flip charts and that sort of thing just to get feedback. One of the other things we want to make sure we do, and I don't have a visual of it today, but we've been working with staff to make sure we can show all of the input that's already been given up to this date, because this has been underway for such a long time, and just remind folks of, hey, these are the things that you've been saying all along, and really connect the dots between what you've been hearing from the public and ultimately what we think we've come up with at this point. So what I'm going to walk you through tonight is kind of the component parts of those boards. And this is just kind of, again, another iteration of visualizations that hopefully start to make things more real. The one thing I think we really are trying to be mindful of is, because this is a comp plan amendment, we don't want folks to get fixated on kind of one visual or one image, because this is really just the policy to help potentially make these things happen. So we want to be mindful of that when we're talking with the public. But we're going to start by kind of reiterating kind of the core policy components of the vision. And this is language, I'm not going to read it to you. This is kind of a edited down version of the longer vision statement that you guys have adopted. We're also going to have a couple of illustrations that walk folks through what is a comprehensive plan? What is a comprehensive plan amendment? And then what does that mean in terms of down the road, zoning changes and that sort of thing? And how does that then set the stage for implementation for really the private sector and public sector investments in these areas? But generally, we're going to kind of present the words of the vision on a board, and then we'll start to get into the visualizations. And we're going to start with, hopefully this is not a surprise to anyone, but the big idea here is that we've really got kind of 6 nodes, or 6 community activity nodes is what we're calling them, and really kind of just introducing this as the organization, if you will, of this part of the county, and kind of what people recognize as Lorton, and just describe these, with words. And I think this is hopefully something that will start to resonate. We want to be able to talk to people about the fact that when we say an activity node, what we mean is kind of that walk shed around a key destination or a key activity center for the area. So we'll present kind of these ideas. And one thing Becca and I were brainstorming on is, we've come up with these brand names, if you will, for the activity nodes, but we were kind of thinking we could actually use the event and have some brainstorming, like, well, what would you call this place? And let people come up with words that they would use to describe some of these places, just to kind of have an interactive component to this. Then we want to introduce this whole concept of market evolution. And this is something that if you go to Google Earth right now, and you were to take a tour of Richmond Highway from Lorton all the way up to Alexandria, you would see all sorts of small infill projects happening today. And we picked 2 from the region. One is right in Falls Church on 29, and one is the Mosaic District. And it's a little hard to see on this screen, but when you zoom in, what you can see is the transition of these places from shopping centers into mixed-use districts. And we kind of thought it would be nice that people could just see it and see how that actually happens over, a 20-year time horizon. So we want to be able to just introduce the fact that what's happening in our region is that the greater Washington region is continuing to grow. We know that we don't just want to grow out, we also want to go up and go vertical. And a lot of communities are seeking to create these kind of new nodes, and they're doing so by transforming a lot of their commercial centers. So we think this is something that hopefully can resonate with the public. We'll also have some photographs underneath each aerial to be able to show kind of what did it look like when it was designed as a commercial shopping center just for cars versus what is it like as a place for people in a mixed use. And we just thought this would be a good way to kind of illustrate that point, because that's essentially what we're proposing for the Lorton area, is that these nodes today are one thing, and that they'll change and redevelop over time through infill development. So with that, we then will have a board that kind of presents, well, what could that look like here? And we're going to pop up the Gunston Plaza and just again reiterate that it's just one example of how Gunston could redevelop. But what we're saying is that we're moving from kind of a single-story suburban footprint into something that is more multi-story and mixed use, and has great places for people, places where you can work, live, and play. We want to be able to introduce what we're calling kind of the core design principles of the Lorton area, in terms of it being filled with multimodal transportation. So it's not just dependent on cars to get around, but putting kind of this emphasis that we need to create places where people can walk and bike. Transit's going to be a part of this in the future. Being able to show folks that we are talking about, when we're talking about those infill locations, that we're going to move anywhere from 3 to 6 to sometimes 10 stories, and that could be all different types of residential development. We want to emphasize the people-oriented building frontages, a great public realm. We want to talk about the diversity of the uses. We want to introduce the fact that structured parking could be a part of this, as well as on-street parking, and then parks and outdoor spaces. I am going to note that we are still working on photographs in terms of getting different ones better ones in some cases, but generally we want to be able to present kind of these design elements that will be the overarching guidance for kind of how the place transforms. Then we want to talk about really those 3 key nodes and actually show folks what could be. And this is, again, Gunston Marketplace and the town center, and just kind of highlighting, you know, what the potential is. And so folks can see that sort of transition. And again, we'll have some additional photographs to back this up. With kind of the, you know, massing diagrams, which is what these really are, we're also then going to show kind of introduce this concept. And what this is really about is that the highest density for infill is really going to be happening in the core of those activity centers. And that's where you'll get the highest buildings. But as you move closer to existing residential, particularly single family residential, it really steps down. And that the policy will actually reflect that. So we're really designing around kind of the highest density in particular will be at those key nodes where you've got, for instance, transit on Richmond Highway and kind of BRT long-term, as well as kind of the VRE station, as well as, you know, access there to 95. So this idea that we don't want to put those really high buildings right next to single-story residential is what we want to convey with these illustrations. And then this is kind of a plan view of that, where we actually are showing the potential for building heights in each of the key areas, Gunston, Lorton, and the town center. And again, we're showing kind of the highest density right on the edge for Gunston Commons, where you can go up to 10 stories, but that would only be on the Richmond Highway edge. Whereas on the other kind of northern edge there, that's where you're only up at like 4 stories. So trying to kind of show folks that, you know, we want the concepts, we want this plan, and we want the policies to really allow for this infill and redevelopment, but not overwhelm that existing character that exists out there today. Also going to then show side by side what I just showed you with the building heights, and then this is just another same set of drawings, but with some of the land use designations and a little more of what you could see in terms of building footprints. And this is where we can introduce, you know, that we're talking about mixed use, we're talking about ground floor commercial, likely some parking garage, you know, parking garage features, and then some open space, those sorts of things, so that every activity node, you will see that it's got a balance of uses. It's got some sort of central kind of open space, gathering place, that sort of thing, and has a strong mix of uses. Also going to show kind of this idea of when we talk about the multimodal transportation network, we're also talking about just improved connectivity, not just by cars, but by really kind of a mixture of access points, which includes trails, which includes slowing down cars as you get to and near each of these nodes. It includes really looking at if we can get some of the density and intensity in some of these nodes, maybe we can also start thinking about the bus rapid transit system and having additional stops, especially along Richmond Highway. And that's what you're seeing with those purple dots in terms of the potential BRT station locations. The good news is BRT is far enough out that we're hoping that this policy amendment from a land use perspective can then be used as the BRT system comes online to influence where those stations might go, and looking for spots where you've got some more density and intensity. So those are the kind of, I guess those are the big pictures, if you will, for what we want to go to the public with. A lot of this builds on what you all have already seen, but we've tried to put some more into it. So with that, our idea again is that we'll have these big boards up. Each of the concepts I presented will kind of be a board, if you will, in and of itself. So we can kind of talk about redevelopment and infill. We can talk about what mixed use looks like. We can talk about where do we want those transportation enhancements, and what are each of these new nodes potentially going to be someday. All that said, we want to be really mindful that, again, because this is a policy amendment, we're not coming in tomorrow and these places aren't changing overnight. All we're trying to do right now is say, hey, here's our long-term vision. Here's the direction that the policy amendment can go in, and get the community to react and respond to that. Staff will also have kind of the longer scheduled process that shows the additional times the public can weigh in on the policy amendment process. So we hope with an open house format, we'll get some interest, especially holding it at the community center. We'll get some pop-ins and we'll be able to facilitate some feedback throughout the day. So with that, I'll pause and open it up for questions, or Stephen or other members of staff, anything you want to add to kind of what we've walked through so far.
I think you've covered the content of where we're at very well, Kate. I guess a little on the format. The plan would be to have a series of boards. We have the space in the library outside of the and also the entryway just outside of the library reserved, and kind of like I said in the meeting that was sent on Friday, members from the public can come in and kind of move through at their own pace and kind of learn, then ask questions of staff, task force members, the consultants, of course, and anyone who's there that they, that wants to be there and participate, if they have any questions about the process, or how we got to where we are at this point. There'll be opportunities to kind of engage with the public, and again, people can move through, as opposed to us talking to them up front. They can move through and kind of react to where we are, as far as the summaries of the vision, and also kind of like what Kate was saying, looking at these things as possible components, but not a finished product. Something that we want to hear from them on as well before we work with you to finish the product. So,
is this the last community meeting that you would be involved in, the consultant? Kate?
Yes, with the exception of I don't believe we're scoped to go to the public hearings, but there will be then a public hearing process. So this will be the last meeting with the public that we'll be a part of.
So I'll open it to others, but I guess for the last probably year or plus, we've been really wanting to kind of hammer out like some elevations and what things would kind of look like, to try to get a feel for, okay, we've got the where generally that things would be, and try to gain that connectivity between them. But the question that we've always had is, what is it going to take to get from point A to point C, where we had a community survey now years ago, and they've mapped out their desire of those things in Lorton. But we've never kind of put pen to paper and look at some data and say, okay, how many rooftops do we need to make that happen? How many, what is the density within a certain area? Where's the market data that tells us that, this is what it's going to take to get there. And so before we went back to the public, we could, as a committee, kind of hammer out those details to say, because I think the committee members have a pretty good inclination as to what the community's tolerances are before we go back to them, to be able to say, okay, we've seen the data, we've seen the numbers, and where would all of that kind of go, and how would it fit, and how would it connect?
That will still be a part of the process, Nick, and part of the final deliverables that the consultants are going to be working on is going to be what gets worked out with the task force. When that is worked out with the task force and staff has the policy to put forth, that's when we're going to put that in front of the community. So we'll be saying, this is what we've heard when we started talking about these kinds of changes. This is where the task force, just like you did with the community vision, in writing, where this is what we've heard from the community, that this is what the task force has adopted as a vision. There's going to be another point where we're either saying the community has said we've gotten things right to this point, or we need to go back and make a few changes. But in the end, when those changes get made, you all will be a part of that process, and staff will take that. The task force and staff will be taking that to the community, even though the consultants aren't there with us.
Yeah. If I could just add real quick though, because you asked specifically about the data, we actually do have some of those numbers. And I think what we can do is we could kind of add to one of these boards to just show, okay, the number of dwelling units here today, and here's what the number of dwelling units could be in the future. And given the market dynamics as we know them, we know that it's kind of this level of density that's really going to be most conducive to mixed use. So if we need to put some of those numbers forward, and you think that's important for the community, I think we can do it in a generic enough way that if you think that would be helpful, given what you have talked to them about in the past. Because I think it's twofold. It's not just the total numbers, but it's actually the discretionary spending that goes along with those households. And that's what is going to determine the type of retail, the type of national or not national brands you get, like all of that stuff. It's not that black and white, but I think just the number of dwelling units, we do have that data. So we certainly could put that out there.
So I think that would be helpful. This is Walter. I think that would be very helpful and kind of have to clarify for many people in the community. So if you would, that would be great. Sorry.
Yeah, just, not as much for the community, but I think the hope was that the committee or the task force itself would be able to see that data, so that we could hammer those things out before we went to the community. Not that we wouldn't use them, with the community, but we have a Lorton Town Center currently, and it flopped, as Catherine can thumbs down it. And it did flop. And as I drive through there the other day, you're looking at it like it just wasn't enough. So what is enough? And can we see that data? And can we as a task force kind of wrap our heads around it and say, okay, is that, does it meet the tolerance of the community? That we've kind of suggested of, mostly kind of 3 to 4, 5 to 6, stories, and where is the land available? We've kind of, drawn a circle or a triangle around the area. We've given kind of the main, street. We've provided a survey of what people want in the area. So, as a committee, we've been asking for a couple of years now, how can we put all of that together to make something that's a viable, plan before we go back to the community with just kind of language and some general information, when the task force itself doesn't kind of have an idea there. But people have their hands up, so I'll let them talk. But Catherine, you gotta unmute.
Nick, I think your question was great, and thank you for asking it, because we've always wondered, what's the elephant in the room? I mean, like, how much density do we need? And then my question really is related. And the first is, and it's so give me a second, branding. And it's related to Lorton's unique, and I always pound this in every single meeting, and I didn't hear it tonight, is what about the Amtrak? We've got all these people coming in. Second, we have a ski resort planned soon. Now, I don't know if they're going to leave the resort, but they certainly should. Third, Fairfax County is not known, it's true, for its mom and pops. It's known more for its chains. So is there a way to leverage the whole Lorton Arts Center, and brand Lorton differently? And that means they will come. And I mean, I can't say that enough, how much opportunity we have, not only with the river, but with the Lorton Arts Center, the whole biking thing, it fits in. Right now, I'm actually at James Madison University. I'm presenting to all these novice teachers, and people are coming up to me because I say I live in Lorton. And what they don't realize is we are one of the most diverse zip codes in the country. I mean, that's something we should have out there. Those are the kinds of things. I love that we have Afghan restaurants, we have Pakistani, we have Thai, we have it all. And these are little homegrown mom and pops. So I don't know. So Kate, help us there. I mean, where can we get our spot and not just another, where's our density? Because we got people coming here. We don't have them staying.
I hear you. So I think what I'm hearing is let's make sure in some of this upfront kind of vision, just the words, maybe we even capture some of the visuals of that diversity. We show some of that uniqueness with pictures of the workforce, are the, pictures of some of these things and those visual assets of what Lorton is today, and have that as kind of the backdrop to, that's why this is what can happen tomorrow, and how do we build on what we've got. We want to do more of that, it sounds like.
We have this whole art center that has culinary, and we have these really gifted community members that can bring their cuisine to the table. I mean, like, what can we even do zoning wise to promote mom and pop? I don't know. I'm not on this. I'm an educator. But I mean, like, I had somebody even talk to me today about whether to move to Lorton or not. They were concerned about diversity. So, I mean, like, those are the kinds of things that we need to promote, just like Florida does on the other side.
Got it.
Mr. Rumberger.
Thank you. Couple things taking off on Catherine the Great. I agree on the branding. There's not yet a what is a Lorton, and so I think we probably need to do something with that, or recommend something in there, and a wordsmith. Could be just a phrase in there. I really like your activity nodes. I think that's really sharp. That's really smart. It's very focused. However, we in one of the nodes we talk about gathering, open space and community gathering. Number 4, I'd ask that you put open space, park space, because the highest rating on people satisfaction in the Lorton South County area is our park space. So I think we need to emphasize that and connect that in. And I really like the idea of formalizing the trail along Potomac Creek. Or Poet Creek. I think that's smart. There was at one time a hold on that because of some certain greenery that's in one place between numbers 1 and actually triangle 1, 2, and 3. It's right there at the corner of the Amtrak and right on Lorton Road. But I think if we can surpass that or figure out a way around that, or to still hold it, and that would be really great. There are 2 questions that come to my mind. How will you share the latest trends in office space reutilization that's currently going on? I mean, every time I pick up the Washington Business Journal, everything talks about how they're redeveloping office space into residential space or shared space. And I think you actually, you do hint at it, I think, in number 2, and you do hint at it in number 3. And I'm wondering whether we should put the word in there, trends, or continuing trends toward, because I think that there's going to be more of that. And the last thing I offer is we have yet to understand the scope of the construction at the Noman Coal Water Treatment Plant across the street from number 3. And that's going to have a direct effect on number 3. And so that might be something, I don't know that we have to address it there, but it might be something you might need to be able to respond to, address when people come through, because it comes up. It does come up, sometimes depending on the wind, but it comes up. And I think we need to just be, not act as if it doesn't exist. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to chime in here? Mr. Sargent, you came live. Unmute, please.
I was going to do it all with signs, but I think, Kate, the one thing that the existing, current residents are going to say is, okay, what about the traffic coming through Lorton? And I know that's the hard one here. So I think it might be helpful to include a slide that talks, at least references strategies. We don't have one clear pathway to no gridlock, but I think it might be helpful to help introduce some ideas of what strategies are out there that we've discussed along this route, this circuitous, this three plus year route, in terms of what we can do collectively to mitigate some of the cut through or parking control, things like that. And as a plan amendment, I think it would help citizens buy into it if we say, yes, there are ways of mitigating the traffic issues.
Got it.
And Tim, if I could, I think we can do that. And the other thing I would reiterate with this is that to Nick's point, one of the key things that we're going to do at the next step, once we have a kind of buy-in about the overall approach, in terms of building heights, in terms of land use generally, we'll also have the data that was referenced, like how many units per acre, what's the floor area ratio, all of the meat and potatoes of what we need to look at on the staff end to run our impact analysis, right? And so it won't just be traffic that needs to be dealt with. It's going to be a more broad discussion about impacts across all disciplines and across all sectors that the county, kind of looked at.
That's a very, Graham, that's a very good point. And I think if we can collect that into here's a strategy going forward, just so people understand that those issues have been reviewed, examined, and will be part of the future planning.
Sure, and I think emphasis on the latter part of that, because we haven't done the impact analysis yet. So that's I want to make sure that that's clear. We're setting the vision first. That includes getting buy-in about the form of development and the type of development, the character of development. But those numbers have not yet been analyzed by staff. That's the next step. And so we can talk about these are the kinds of things that we will need to examine in the next step certainly before a planning study is approved or amended. We'll need to do that impact analysis, and that's what we have transportation consultants that are going to help us with that as well. So maybe it's about outlining the types of strategies that we anticipate and the types of things that we've studied now that once there's buy-in about the vision.
Yeah, I agree. It helps citizens know that you're aware of these issues, you've considered them, you have a plan for tackling them as you look to the future of this plan amendment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Gorham.
Just a couple somewhat random thoughts. Everything I'm seeing here tonight, I do think the most serious things to me are considered in these plans, and overall they look pretty good, and the tapering away from the current residential and that kind of stuff all looks good to me. One of the things that I'm looking at today, which has kind of changed my opinion just from the graphic today, is you guys have all heard me talk about before, let's leave Lorton Market alone so you can drive right up to it and stuff like that. But in seeing just this simple plan, that has kind of like a main street and is, right off the main drag and stuff, I've actually completely flip-flopped on that as maybe my favorite area to redevelop, just based on that, that one little graphic. Also, it's obviously close to 95 and access is good and visibility could be good, from 95 and stuff like that. Just moving on to kind of another random thought is, does anybody think that Lorton Station, let me say that another way. Does anybody think Metro will ever come down the railroad tracks here to get to Prince William County? Will Prince William County have enough density that they'll want Metro and it will pull it through there? And if so, would a Metro stop end up at Lorton Station, or possibly would it end up at Lorton Market Street, the other side of the railroad tracks, in that industrial area, possibly with like a place to walk over top of the railroad tracks? Just thought, are we thinking far enough out? Is that a possibility at all? Should we consider that, have some, what if kind of stuff around possible metro stop in this community? And just kind of the last somewhat random thought for the day is I do think, and I mentioned it a little bit at the last meeting too, that we should at least consider Woods of Fairfax and possibly Wildwood in our comprehensive plan language, just as options, not as focus or anything like that. In the interest of some of these little bit higher densities we're talking about, is it enough to flip 60-year-old garden apartments? But those are kind of my random thoughts at this point, and everything I see tonight, I'd just like to say good work.
Christine. Christine, unmute.
Oh, yep, sorry. So just a few things. As far as process, I'm just thinking the day of, is there going to be points in time where there will be people presenting or sharing? Because I know when we did it at Laurel Hill at the elementary school, we had periods of time where there were, on the hour or whatever it was, that you kind of got somebody was speaking. I think it might have been Supervisor Stork was speaking and did an overview, and then there were that could go listen, and then there were people, walking around the other times. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, how the flow is going to be for this.
Our original thought is that it would just be a little bit more free flowing without formal presentations, but it would not be difficult to incorporate what you just described, where we could do like a 5 to 10 minute overview. I'm wondering with the space we have, I think we just have to huddle with staff a little bit on that. But it's certainly something we could do. We could also do a little, almost like a taped presentation where it's actually up on a screen that somebody could stand in front of for 5 minutes and kind of get an overview. And that's always that we can do that by walking through the boards and kind of giving a presentation to the graphics that folks could watch possibly.
So I would throw that out to the group and see if you all have any thoughts on that. And then Stephen, my other question for you is we're obviously going to put this in our July newsletter, but as far as reaching out to NCS, LCAC, obviously we've got Nick and Dale here from South Fairfax or South County Federation. Do you want us to start sending this out, or how have you done that already, or I just want to make sure we're coordinated on who's doing what.
Yeah, I've sent the same information that I sent to the task force on Friday to NCS and to LCAC. I even sent it to our point of contact with the Virginia Public Rail Authority. And I think anyone and NCS has offered to send it out to some places of worship in the area. And I know you have an extensive list of HOAs. We wanted to go to everyone, and we try not to be we'll try not to overlap, because so if you want to let me know whoever you have a list of and you're sending it to. But in this case, I think we want to spread the word so well. I'm also not against overlap, in some cases, so.
Okay. Yeah. We'll start blasting it out. We'll also share it with all of our electeds,
okay,
as well. So, okay. And then any thoughts, I sometimes feel we're so entrenched in this. We all obviously know what's going on, but you're going to have a wide range of people that are walking in, some having background on this and some not.
So Christine, just to kind of answer your question, that when we were thinking about how to do the public meeting with the community, it was pretty intentional when we were thinking about the open house style format, in that we're going to have a lot of staff there that I think knows this project really well. We'll have Renaissance there. So I think we're going to have like 5, 6, 7, 8 people on hand. So if we get a lot of people in from the community that have questions, we can talk to them on a one-on-one basis. We can split apart, answer questions more specifically to like how much they might know or might not know about the project. And that way it's not like some people might want to sit around for 5-10 minutes, not necessarily sit through like a 20 or 30-minute presentation with questions and answers. So I think just because we have so much staff there with experience with knowing this project pretty well, I think that format is a good approach, but that's just kind of how we were kind of thinking of it going into it.
Okay. I would also like to get the flyer in Spanish.
That's been they've been sent out for an estimate, and I think we have Spanish, Arabic, and I can't remember. There was a third language. We took the top 3 languages that NCS identified for the whole Lorton area, not just the study area, but for all the Lorton census tracts. So we're gonna have the English, and then we're gonna have 3 multi-language companions, and then on the ones that I just printed out that I'm going to take to like I'm going to take a bunch to LCAC and to the community center, to the library. The library is also doing the library is also promoting us in the in their newsletter and on their website. They'll be helping us out with that. But the ones I'll be taking out tomorrow, there's also about 8 languages that are there where the county provides translation services. So people just want to see what's on the flyer, then they want to make a call later and try to learn more about it. They'll be able to do that too. But the flyers themselves will be in 4 languages.
So I'd also suggest making a sign and having it right there when you walk into the community center. So if there's anything of those things you want us to help with, just Stephen, let us know so we can coordinate.
Definitely will. And thanks. Like I said, spread as far as we can spread the word and as wide as we can spread the word. That's what we want to do, because we know there'll be a lot of walk-in traffic, but we also want to support it with people who may not regularly come to the community center, or may not, kind of like Salem was saying, may not have a whole 2 hours to sit and hear a presentation, be given a presentation and everything. This is kind of like the first step of saying, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we've been doing, this is how you can learn more. And then these are going to be the other points in time leading all the way up to the Board of Supervisors meeting when you can get involved. So.
Hey, Stephen, one thing, before we moved on, I want to make sure that Linwood got a chance. I know that he had a question about Metro, and I think we have Tom Burke on the line who might be able to answer the question that he had raised.
Yeah, I know the Metro Rail could come from 2 directions. It could come from Huntington, and we did a DRP did a study that found that it would be, probably an idea that would be worth looking into to Hybla Valley. But I think the blue line is probably what Linwood was more thinking about, coming down from Franconia Springfield, and there has been some DRPT studies on that corridor as well, but I don't think they are very far along. But it is something that we are looking at with DRPT, with WMATA, and with Prince William County. But at this point in time, I don't think that we're in a position to assume Metro Rail coming down the 95 corridor or coming down the Richmond Highway corridor, but it's something we'll continue to monitor.
So I guess the best thing at this point is to just make sure that we don't do anything that would hurt the ability or put ourselves in a box for that possibility in the future. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Hey, thank you very much for your input and your expertise.
Thank you. Wendy?
Oh, I thought Catherine was next, but thank you. But I'm going to start with I'm going to just comment on I think it was it Thomas that just spoke about the metro.
Mhm.
So I just want to say that I don't know how long the study went for the Silver Line out to Dulles, but if I'm not mistaken, the ridership is lacking. Is that a true statement? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but my point is we have a lot of commuters out in this area, Woodbridge and going to Quantico, that will greatly benefit from a metro. It doesn't matter what color line is extended out this way, it would definitely be beneficial. Myself, you know, I used to drive from Lorton to Columbia, Maryland every day. Okay, so to be able to just, you know, I mean, the metro wouldn't help me there, but still some type. It's not just going to Maryland, but if someone could take the metro from Woodbridge to the Pentagon, you know, that would be great. It'll alleviate a lot of traffic. So that's just something to think about. And as far as the metro and, you know, the density necessary, I would just say this. 15 years ago, my community did not exist. We weren't here 15 years ago. We have 103 single family homes here today. When I came to Virginia 20 years ago, the 495 interchange overhead highway construction did not exist. When I first came, one of the biggest warnings that I received was, be careful when you're going through that area. It's a lot of accidents, a lot of deaths. So we have to be mindful that I know this is a, what is it, 2030, 2040 study, but time waits for no one. People come in, you know, like I said, my community did not exist 15 years ago. So Tim Reiser harps consistently on thinking big. And I want us to make sure that we're thinking big and we're encouraging those in positions of authority to understand that, you know, it's happening, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. People are coming, the transportation infrastructure is necessary to support, you know, the personnel that are moving in. So I just, Thomas, I'm not wanting to put you on the spot, but I just want to make that point. I have, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think if the BRT comes to fruition and ridership on the BRT shows up, you know, that it's climbing and it becomes perhaps more towards the metro, I think that's one step that could be taken. And if the VRE continues to grow in ridership, I think those are signs that maybe could show that Lorton is moving towards that metro level density. And I think a lot of it is going to be what kind of densities that you decide are something that you want to see in Lorton. But I've heard the same things about the Silver Line. I think you got to give it some time, but you know, I've heard the ridership on the Silver Line is not what they were expecting, but hopefully over time.
And to that end, the ridership on the express lane is lacking as well, as evidenced by the stoppage in the regular highway lanes, right? So, but I just wanted to bring that up. I want to comment on some of the other points that were made, to which I agree. Christina, I agree with, you know, your question in regards to the form, how are we sharing the information during the open house. And I think it's a great idea that a tape presentation may be good as well, but there should be a mechanism provided for participants to provide feedback. You know, whether it's a form, a sheet of paper that they put in a box or something, if it's taped, or even if someone's doing a 5 or 10 minute presentation, there should be a form so that they can provide feedback and encouraged to provide feedback, or else they're going to come in, walk around and leave. And we will only get the perspective from the people that are sitting here on this Zoom right now. Another point I wanted to make, not only, I agree with Catherine, we have the Amtrak, we have the ski resort coming in, and we also have Overlook Ridge Park that's supposed to be here as well, one of the highest points in the Northern Virginia area. So as when we're considering the branding, those are some key areas that can be highlighted in addition to the Workhouse Arts Center. Those are key amenities that we can highlight. And just my last point, over the Father's Day weekend, I had my grandchildren up in Middle River, Maryland, where they live. And up in that area, I was able to take them to the jump park, Urban Air, took them roller skating, took them duck pin bowling, and Monster Mad mini golf, just up in that area. So they were home. I went up there because they had recreational things to do for little kids. You know, the oldest is 9, the youngest is 3, but together, I mean, these are family fun activities, you know, so those are types of things that would attract families, young families, because we have a lot of young families in the Lorton area. So those are things to consider, along with the restaurants and, you know, things of that nature. But I want to commend Renaissance on the job that you're doing so far. The way that you've packaged the information to present back to us, I really agree with and I appreciate it. It's comprehensive, and you've actually on this particular slide that you have up now, you're making it interactive by asking participants at the open house, what would you call these nodes? You know, so I appreciate that. And that is the end of my sharing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Wendy. Just a quick comment on number 3. I've never heard the term Gunston Commons before. It's Gunston Plaza is the shopping center. Where did Gunston Commons come from? Or is that an error?
We are throwing these ideas out because we wanted to rebrand all the places, and that's why, again, this is like a throw it up on the wall, see what sticks. But each of these kind of is a nod to the vision that we think they might, you know, develop into. So just thoughts, but that's why we kind of thought, well, these are just consultant words. You know, we want the community, we want this to come from you all. So that's why we would like to introduce it softly and then kind of get people to name these places.
Got it. Catherine.
I know I've already spoken once, but what Linwood mentioned really resonated with me, and it's a perfect come after for Wendy. I commuted into Manhattan for 10 years, lived in New Jersey, and I took the New Jersey Transit train before Midtown Direct and would change in Hoboken or in Newark. And those were, or Jersey City for the ferry. So I knew exactly what I needed to do. What I think we're missing here, and I really mean this to piggyback on what Linwood said, is we already have metro access through the VRE. Unfortunately, we don't have enough frequent VRE times. It's going to be changing though. That's already slated for 2030. What we don't have that New Jersey does have is a commuter-friendly pamphlet. If you want to get into DC, then just take this train and switch to Metro easily at Springfield. Those are adjoined. But even when you get to Springfield, it is not user-friendly. If you go into Hoboken, there's an easy, there's a line that says the path is here. So, I mean, like, we don't have that infrastructure here yet. And I would like to see it. So when we're talking about extending the blue line, that sounds like a lot more time and a lot more study. And I bet one day it'll happen. But at the same time, being a train passenger, I actually prefer the train. And the train can do the same doggone thing as a metro. We just need to educate the public on how to do this. Second, we have mega buses that leave our train station. I mean, that's an access point that's phenomenal for Manhattan or Philly. Our kids get to Philadelphia for $35 round trip from Lorton. I mean, that's the kind of stuff too. That's another transportation access point. Many people, I've worked with families in our community near the library, don't have cars. I mean, they walk to my community to catch the buses. So, I mean, those are that transportation node cannot be forgotten. And then finally, my harp that I'm going to keep on beating in is this not Amtrak, but you know what I'm saying, the Florida, you know what I'm saying, the Florida people, the snowbirds.
Auto train.
Train. Thank you, the auto train. We need to educate them. So explicit instruction. How do you catch the train to DC? Where is an accessible point for them to not have to walk down nasty Lorton Road to Lorton Station Boulevard, which is quite nice? Is there an easy access point for them just to walk over a bridge or under a bridge? I don't know, to get to our train. But that train station there accesses the blue line. And I've wondered often, I mean, the blue line's more accessible to National Airport. Yellow line goes to what, LaFont? And thank you. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr. Sargent.
Thanks, sir. Heard a lot of good points in this conversation and discussion, and very much appreciate it. I'd like to build on something that was mentioned earlier about a presentation. I don't think you need a separate presentation for the whole thing. And because I know that the folks who will be manning and staffing the various different stations during the community meeting will be helpful. What I'd like to suggest, though, is you have so many interesting components of the future of Lorton expressed here, and I think it would be helpful to have a 5 to 7 minute videotaped presentation of how you bring those together, how you make this the future. And I'm thinking even beyond just this meeting. If you have something, that could be done by the Channel 16 team at Fairfax, for Fairfax video and things like that, you could create a very good, almost promotional video of what this vision can look like for the future. I say that because we're all talking about how you're going to get the train here, how are you going to get buses, how are you going to connect this. You have a chance to show what that vision can look like for the future and all the possibilities it presents. And is it hyping this? Yes, it is, because you have a lot more to promote and present than we have had previously. Kate, I do appreciate all the components and the strategy you have for creating a future Lorton. I think it's very creative. It's very strategic. I think we could show that in a video so that it introduces the people at the meeting to here's the big picture, the big vision of what the future of Lorton can look like. And then they go to the various stations and have the subject matter experts talk about what it looks like, but they've already got a sense of how it all comes together. in the future, what it can be, what it can look like. And you keep that video because you also have to promote this to the Board of Supervisors at some point. And if you're showing this, in a fashion that says this is a really cool future for the future of Lorton and how it can connect to all the things the county has done with, envision, Embark Richmond and this, you provide connections, you provide a way of making it say, this is an exciting future. You also have a sudden 5 to 7 minute tape to promote this area going forward. That's my 2 cents. I just see a lot of potential here and all that's you've put together and get people excited. That's one of the challenges. We go through a lot of planning and then we have boards, you have a chance to get people really excited about the future of Lorton. And I think making a 5 to 7, video almost production before residents go to the various stations where everybody explains it would be very helpful, and give it some narration, give it some oomph for the future. That's my 2 cents. And now I'll shut down my video production community and let everybody else talk. But thank you. I think you have a good chance here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fryer, good to see you online.
All right, can you hear me, Nick? I'm sorry.
We can hear you. Floor is yours.
Great. Oh, no, thank you. Good to see everybody. I think one of the elephants in the room, and that I really feel like we need to discuss, is, the demographic, who we're trying to target. With all due respect, I appreciate all of you guys and myself, but, 2040, you're trying to target like my kids. I have a 21-year-old, I have a 19-year-old. You're trying to target them about staying here in Lorton. And I can tell you based on some of the meetings that we have and the conversations that I have with my kids and their friends, and my daughter's 13, she's the youngest, their vision is not our vision. And by that, I mean, and one of the things that Tim always points on, Riser that is think big. That's what he means by think big. 20, let me tell you, my kids, they don't want to ride Metro. They're not Metro people. They're 21, they're 19, trains, that's like not their thing. And even when you go to other areas, public transit is really looked upon. I'm out here in the Chicago area, and public transit ain't it anymore. People are doing different things now, and we have to kind of be innovative. And I think the elephant in the room, and I've discussed it with Stephen, and I've discussed this with Tim Riser as well. The elephant in the room is where are these people going to live? If the economy is changing, the world is changing, and we have to look at that. So people aren't going to want to come to Lorton if they don't have a place to live, and that's some of the things that I'm speaking to when I speak to people, in my age bracket, from 40 on down. People who are trying to make a way here, those people working in Supervisor Stork's office who would love to live in Lorton, but they can't afford to live in Lorton. So you want to bring these people to the table. You're going to have to show them where they're going to work, where they're going to live, to get them involved, because I've spoken to several young adults around Lorton, and as I go and I've tried to recruit them to this group, and they're kind of like, no, a bunch of old people living around me, with all due respect, and they're like, I don't want to participate in it because they're not really going to listen to what I have to say. So I think what we have to do is like maybe target some of the high school kids, see how we can get them involved in the process. Think creatively outside of the box, Kate. I appreciate all your work, but think creatively outside of the box. I can tell you, in this recent primary, my kid got involved in elections. You know why? Because they were YouTube ads. You know what I mean? That's where the kids are. That's where our demographic is. There's a way that you can have ads that are tied to your area on YouTube going through to the various people, whatever. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that whole process works. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that we need to get input from younger adults. the high schoolers now, the freshmen in college, the Northern Virginia kids, because like I said, the way they think about what a city looks like and the way we think about what a city looks like is completely different. I'm learning that as I'm talking to my kids. It's completely different. So I think we gotta like start, targeting that demographic and seeing what their ideas are, and trying to get input from them and encouraging them. And one way we can start is reaching out to the high school, there in South County and seeing how we can get them involved, bringing in the young Republicans, young Democrats, whoever, getting them involved in the process at Northern Virginia Community College or wherever, because those are the people that we need to get involved in the process. And I'm telling you, based on, just anecdotal information and me walking around and talking to these individuals, their number one concern is housing. Their number one concern is affordability. Because if I'm making $50,000, I can't afford to live in Lorton. It's just the bottom line. And it's causing these people to migrate and move further south, to the point where I feel like by 2040, Fredericksburg will be the new Lorton at this point. So we've got to find creative ways to get these people involved in the process, and be open to how we can visualize things, and what matters to them. So we can't gloss over that. I know someone spoke earlier about, we'll get to that. I think it was Graham spoke earlier about, we'll get to that with respects to later on in the study. But when you're talking to this demographic of people, that's going to be a concern. How can I afford to live in Lorton? I don't want to be a part of a planning project when I can't even afford to live there. All right. Thanks, everybody.
If I could just make one quick response, because we have talked about this in other meetings, and I think what I'm hearing is we need to elevate what is actually proposed here, which is a whole lot more housing and a whole lot more diversity of housing, with the potential for it to be at very different price points. So it's not going to solve all the housing problems, but I think your points are really, really good, because I think the two things I've heard so far tonight are, we need a bit of a sales pitch about the future of Lorton and all the great things that are happening. But then I think we need to tie that to the reason this plan's so important is it enables some of the things that were just described, which is that we want to be able to have the kids who have grown up here to maybe stay here and or want to stay here, which means having more options for where people can live. And I think we can get some of that language built in and some of those visuals built in just to highlight the housing side, because all of these mixed use centers, we're not talking about big office buildings. We're talking about a lot of residential. That is what this strategy is really about, is infill with residential. So maybe we do need to highlight the housing story just a little bit, in addition to some of the other things. So thank you for those comments. I'm sure others have comments too.
One thing I just want to say very quick, and I know, Dale, this will make you happy. We have 2 summer interns in our office. One is a West Potomac graduate, senior at Virginia Tech, who's been with us since May. Michelle Tugby, graduating senior from South County, going to Brown in August, will be starting with us on Friday. So I think this would be a really good project for Michelle to get moving on, because one of the things that we talked about is engagement in their age group. And so she's got some ideas coming in, and so we will get this to her first thing on Friday. So one way that we can help.
Stephen, did you have a quick comment on that before we go to Tim Reiser?
Sure. I was just going to say that we have already engaged Channel 16, and we've been working with them. The actual video that I sent out with the link to YouTube is a Channel 16 production. We are also in the talks about seeing what we could do as far as having them there on the day of the open house, and with the idea that came up about possibly having a rolling video. We'll talk to them. I don't know if the amount of time that it would take to get the script correct and all the visuals and everything would be enough to get us there at that meeting. But there's some other things we could do, like with PowerPoint presentations and narrative, they could possibly go through at that meeting. But the end product of all this, the whole reason for our relationship and what we've been working with Channel 16 is to have something that shows how we're hoping that this is a big event, and getting the interaction and showing the visuals, showing that there are visuals in place for the event, and also more to come in the works as far as the schedule. That's the next step in the promotion. So it's not just leading up to one event, it's leading up to this whole idea and this whole process of that, in this part of the process we're in now, in the conceptualize and in the policy creation phase. So that's where we're planning to go with the relationship we're building with Channel 16 around this particular study. So and depending on how everything works, we're going to continue to do that with other studies too. So we're hoping this will be a model for that.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Reiser.
I just want to say I'm quite impressed. We have a large group of people who really care, who really want this to be good and to be successful. And at the core of it, the issue is how many people does it take to some extent. So we do need to answer that question, and how much is acceptable to get there. But if we're going to do it, then it needs to be done well, and it needs to be done successfully enough. And I know it's hard, especially getting retail without a lot of rooftops. We're going to have to. And it's then ultimately a trade-off. And is it acceptable for all of us? But I tell you, what's comforting is how much passion there is with this whole group for trying to get something done and done something well, and how careful it's of concern and consideration. I've heard a lot of good points from a lot of good people in here. So, and Ahmad's right. We do need to make sure it's available for everybody. I mean, it can't be just for, people old and white like me, just old men. I mean, it's got to be for everybody, because that's what everybody's coming in, and that's where it is. So yes, but at the end of the day, those are the questions. How many people is enough? But again, very impressed with all of you and really care about the way you guys taking it so concerned. Thank you.
Hey, watch that old stuff, buddy. I resemble that remark.
Yes, you do.
Thank you very much.
As do I.
Mr. Sargent, do you have another comment?
Well, I just wanted to build on what Ahmad was saying. I totally agree. And the outreach, and I think Christine's onto it too. The outreach for the next generation who hopefully will live here. To the extent that you can experiment, at least try with social media in this case, would be very helpful. We look, and I'm preaching to the choir here when it comes to staff. I mean, we look at different ways of reaching the next generation and the next generation of residents here throughout the county, and to try even more social media and more video and things like that, and components of what we've been talking about, I think would be very, very helpful and very useful for the process. So good ideas all.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just to piggyback off of some of the comments, I think that Lorton has a certain sense of pride in our diversity that we have right now. And as we're considering 2040, a lot of what people have said is, hey, Lorton is very diverse now, and we want it to be diverse in 2040, and we can make that happen by our own children wanting to live here and being able to live here. And that has to be part of the possibilities that this endeavor encompasses. That I have children and I'd like them to live near me. Christine, you have children that are about to graduate from college, and is Lorton somewhere that they would like to come back to? Ahmad, sounds like you're going to be in the same boat soon, and I'm sure we all want children. Christine nods her head. Well, we got to work on that. If it's not a place they want to come back to, then I think part of our goal is to look at who we have here. I think nobody wants to change a lot of the residential or demographics in the Lorton area. I think it's a great thing and a positive. And how do we hang on to that as part of this endeavor? And part of that is in looking at, what are the numbers and how can we make those fit to make sure that everybody is covered, that, no matter what you're working in, earning 40,000 to 100,000 plus a year, that you have a spot where you can be in the Lorton area, so you can be close to family. I'm going to look around. I don't know who we have or have not heard from. Are there any other further comments? Not seeing any. Whoa. Okay. Next steps.
So for next steps, we'll be distributing Kate's presentation with the boards to all members of the task force, and we'll also be getting the recording of this meeting up to share with you all, and of course members who weren't able to make it tonight. And we'll be asking within a week to have any additional comments you may have back, so to give the consultants time to think about how they might fit in. And it looks like Kate has her hand up also.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of recap. You'll get a copy of what you saw tonight, but I think there are a couple of changes that we'd like to make prior to the public meeting. Number one is we do have the data. We have modeled kind of those footprints, and we know roughly a number of dwelling units. And I think it's just important for us to say, hey, this is what we're talking about. So I'd like to be able to include that in some of the boards somewhere. And the second is, I feel like when we did a presentation a while back, we did lead with kind of what's so great about Lorton today and all these things that are happening. So I have this vision now of like a beauty board where we can show some of the things that are already happening, that are in the works, that are just kind of, again, we're building on a lot of momentum, and I want that to be maybe something that people can see and hear. And then we'll also I'll be able to share with you some of the ideas about the interactive piece of this. We'll work with staff to see if we record something or just have some way that if somebody wants to just watch me present or somebody else present, we can maybe do that as well. But just know that what you're going to see from the board standpoint will continue to evolve between now and the 15th. But you saw most of it. We're just going to add a little bit to it.
So I appreciate that you have the data. I appreciate that it would go on the board. I think what the task force has been looking for a long time is the ability to see that before we present it to the public. So whether that be in a meeting or whatever the forum is, but prior to that being disseminated to the public, that the task force be able to see that data and have an exchange of ideas in between. Mr. Gorham.
Thought that just popped into my head is comprehending numbers and stuff like that. I can look at a development and tell you roughly how many houses are in it, just because we've been doing, several of us can do that because we've been doing this for years and years and everything. But, if you were to ask me right this second, we might have even been presented with these numbers before. How many rooftops there are in Lorton right now, or how many residents or whatever. I can't even get close. I can't even give you a good guess. But I'm just wondering if we could do something to help everybody understand that, it's going to take 30% more rooftops to accomplish these goals than what we have right now, or 50%, or something like that, to make sure that you have a grasp of what you're doing. Because if you just throw me a number, it doesn't mean a lot. I know also, of course, there's ratios for different housing types, for school age populations, and all those kind of things. And that's probably getting way too complicated, but just some way to have a real good comprehension of what we're talking about. Just a thought.
One thing I wanted to just be Nick, you'd raised a question about wanting to see the data in advance of the meeting. It's on the 15th. with regards to that, I mean, we can have Kate and her group put together the data to send it to the task force in advance, but it sounds like you're looking for something that's more formal than that. Are you hoping for kind of a separate meeting in advance of the community meeting on the 15th, or are you thinking that, you know, providing the data in kind of written form with a comment period where we can talk about it? I just want to be clear about expectations and what you want us to do, you know, in advance of that open house.
So my personal feeling, I'll let others chime in, is for the last couple of years, we've been wanting to see, like, okay, you know, we've identified kind of where it is in general. We've been moving that closer and closer. We have a, you know, community survey of residents saying, you know, what they would like to see. And we're trying to put those together to say, okay, well, what's the cost of that? And not having seen the data or having any inclination of what that data is, you might throw it out and people go, okay, we don't need to meet, but you might throw it out and people go, holy cow, we've got some questions. So my first inclination is to say it should be sent out and then we should meet. And I'll let others chime in to see what they think. Anybody? Are we okay? I guess I'll say this way: are we okay with just everybody seeing it the day of the community meeting and being on a board?
I would prefer to at least see some kind of preview numbers. I think if we're going to be there at the event, at the open house, community open house, and we're going to be around, are we going to be identified as task force members? Or are we just going to be citizens walking around and the Renaissance staff and Fairfax County staff identified as such? I mean, I'm going back to what exactly are we going to be accomplishing at that meeting? And in order for me to accomplish more, do I need to know more? So I'm agreeing with you, Nick, on that. I think I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Thank you.
This is Walter. I would think the committee should preview the information, I guess the final draft, if you will, prior to the Saturday meeting, and hope there's enough time that if we do see some numbers or the draft and it's rather alarming and we go, whoa, that we could quickly pull a meeting together a couple of days in advance just so we can understand it. But if it comes across pretty straightforward and we can understand it, then I don't think we need to have a meeting. So I guess I'm saying that we need to be pretty fluid within this short period of time that we have before the community meeting.
I don't know, Walter, it seems to me there's a significant importance of knowing ahead of time what somebody's going to recommend that we're going to stand behind until we've seen it. So I think we need to make sure we've seen it beforehand so that we're not being surprised, because it may not be something we could support. That just wouldn't make sense. We haven't done our job properly, right? We wouldn't have done our job if we hadn't turned around and gotten the chance to see the numbers beforehand, before we're out there presenting it to somebody else and we didn't know it ourselves. No, that doesn't make sense. So I agree.
So second question, I guess this is for staff. The July 15th, is that a hard and fast date for a community meeting?
We've already been advertising it, and it's been posted to the web, and some of the channels we've used may have already released it. So
okay. I mean, that's just a question, but that's fine.
Yeah, because I guess one other option is if you receive the numbers and the numbers, I'm thinking the data is not going to change, how you see it, but what ends up changing is the form of development you're looking at. So that was kind of why I think the consultants weren't really at a point of showing the community a form of development, as opposed to getting them kind of used to this idea that change is needed to move forward. And that's kind of why Graham kind of talked about the data could come after we hear from the public as to whether or not they're even okay with the form. Because if they're okay with the form, if they're not okay with the form, then the form kind of helps us work the data, as opposed to putting data out there and we've heard from the task force to say think bold. So we put the boldest data out there, and then no one likes that boldest data. There's no way, you're only pulling back from that data now, if that makes sense. So if we were to kind of if we kept it where we are.
It does make sense. I hear you. I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I think at the same time, we put the boldest number out there, but then the community, they see the form, and then they truly see the numbers.
Well,
they go,
yeah, but you don't want to turn around and scare off the biggest number out there and throw something wild out that's crazy. We ought to look at it. We ought to have a general sense of it. Again, it how big or how bold we go beyond where we are, what we propose is up to the community. If the community is more positive, then we'd push for higher, better pieces. And you can suss that out at the various meetings that you'll have along the way. That's the community process that Dan would like to see. Make sure that we're getting everybody involved and everybody a chance to see and grow with it and let them take it and push the direction of where this ultimately plays out. The community ultimately plays it out. We just recommend and let them figure it out.
I guess the reason I'm kind of bringing this up, and the original question I had, I guess, was, will the consultant be around for the next public meeting? And the answer seemed to be no. So, I'm okay with not having the data rolled out and included in the community meeting, as long as we get to it and the consultant is still around to discuss it. But that sounded like the answer was maybe no.
Well, if the task force has provided the data to start looking at, and the community is focused on the form, and then as we are promoting what's going on here with the community, with the community open house, the community is also going to be learning that through the members of the community who follow through with the website are also going to be learning that these task force meetings have been advertised as public meetings, since for over a year now. A lot of people just don't have their eyes on it. We put it on the public calendar all the time. So
Sure. Yeah.
as the task force is talking about the numbers and looking at the numbers and seeing where the numbers may change, in some cases you're going up, in some cases you may be going out, but still stepping down. There are a lot of things to consider when you get the numbers. It's not just numbers it's not all about numbers at Gunston Plaza. It's not all about numbers at Lorton Marketplace. It's not all about numbers at the VRE station at Lorton Town Center. So that, again, right now is a point of saying, this is what we're thinking about to the community. These are the potential form. We have different heights spread throughout those. If the community came and said that 10 stories along Route 1, the farthest away from the nearest residential, is too high, then you kind of have to start looking, if the numbers aren't going to really, if there's a goal, if there's an end goal to have a certain level of development, then the numbers may come down at Gunston Plaza. But then again, that's when you start looking at how everything steps down away from the central part of Gunston Plaza. So I think at this point, again, having that community feedback more on the form, and then working on the numbers continue to work on as the task force continues to work on the numbers in a transparent way, the community is invited to come in and be a part of that. Be a part of that conversation, and they can see how the numbers get spread and how the numbers get changed and what the trade-offs are, and be a part of that discussion in that way too. The open house is really to spread the word, to bring in the questions and kind of see if we are even at the right place right now. So,
and I totally agree with that. I guess my only comment is let's do that, but the consultant is getting off at the Springfield stop. So how do we, they're going to give us the numbers and then they're going to go, and good luck. So how do we keep them in the room to have those enough discussions about those numbers, kind of after the fact? So we're going to come into the July meeting and say, And Kate, you keep moving on my screen here. We're going to come into the July meeting and say, here's the form, get the feedback, we're going to leave. But my understanding, the consultants is only around until roughly September, and they won't be around for any future community meetings. And so the clock is kind of ticking and they're getting off the stop. Can we make this happen without, you know?
But will staff have the consultants? Kate, will you still take calls from the staff? Or
Yeah.
staff? Are you?
Yeah. Can I jump in for a few minutes? Let's talk about the numbers for a minute, because we have kind of shared some of that in a preliminary way with both the market consultant as well as staff. And we've got just, total number of unit counts, and we've got a range. And that's just what's reflected in the massing diagrams. You kind of have a low to a high range. Is it just the number of residential units that you all are most concerned about? Or help me understand kind of what the issues are, so that I think there's two things we could do. For the meeting with the public, I loved the suggestion of, let's just talk about, a 20%, 30% increase over the next 20 years of residential units, and that will beget hopefully, some additional non-residential square footage, so we can create some lively street life in these centers. So help me understand, is it that simple that you all want to see that total number? And if so, I think we can get that to you pretty quickly. What I will say is that if you all are like, no, that's way too much, the form doesn't change that much, other than it starts to get, the buildings go down. We're fundamentally not going to change the concepts, other than maybe, if there's not enough residential, then you're going to start to reduce your square footage for non-residential. So I think the goal with the amendment is kind of, we feel like our charge has been, is to get to a form that accomplishes, again, kind of creating a there where you've got enough new rooftops that I think even at the low end is going to generate more demand for the non-residential. So if there's a way that you all think we could, still present to the public kind of a percent increase, and then we can share with you this week, hey, this is what we're really talking about in terms of unit count, is that enough?
So Kate, I think it's the residential number, because I believe one of the main points from the community is going to be a transportation issue, traffic, right? That's the thing that we hear so much about. Will I be able to leave my community if we bring in X number of people? But at the same time, if we don't have X, then we can't have Y, right? So if we don't have the number of rooftops, the number of residents, then we can't get all of these other nice amenities and restaurants that we want to have. And then we'll be looking like this Lorton Station, a Lorton Market. I always confuse the two. And, where it's, I guess it's pretty vibrant, but the restaurants over there seem to have a difficult time trying to survive on what's there now. And that's where the community need to realize, if you want to have Y, then we got to have X.
Yeah, so I guess getting back to then, and Graham, I know you and Stephen, you guys have seen kind of what we've produced. Do we feel that, we've got enough there that we can maybe just share the ranges that we've come up with, and then we present that as a percentage increase? And we just have like a little sidebar on one of these presentation boards that makes the point that you just made. One of the big strategies here for Lorton is we're talking about infill housing. Why are we talking about infill housing? It's to accomplish these three things. And that means, allowing a little more density. And it also means, yes, that means there are going to be a few more cars around, but here's all the traffic strategies we also have in place. Here's we're looking at transit coming in. We're looking at more walkability, that not every car, not every trip needs to be a car trip. And we just kind of present that as, there's a holistic plan here. But the reason I'm going to say but to that is what you also heard, is that the traffic impact analysis also hasn't been done yet. So we can't overpromise on that front, which is why it's a little scary to put numbers out early. But I think if we just do a % increase for the public and then we continue to work with you guys, because we're not going away after this meeting, we're still around. So refinements to these graphics, if needed, can certainly be done.
Sure, I'm okay with the, with the percentage, roughly increase for the public. I think what my understanding is that we were really looking forward for a consultant to come on board to provide us with this data. And it just starts to sound like, gosh, we're having this public meeting, and then yes, there'll be no more public meetings, and will we have enough time to kind of disseminate this data and have those conversations? Before you're not able to attend a meeting anymore, at least, or I'm not sure how long there is left, but my understanding was that your ability to attend the meeting and answer questions and be part of that discussion is more towards the end than the beginning. And I'll let others chime in here. Christine.
You're muted, Christine.
Okay, sorry, I was dialing in. I didn't want it to be loud. The one thing that I would say, and I know that we are with, a different consulting group than we were before, is that, the premise, purpose, reason for this group is to help with outreach and engagement. And when we did the last community meeting, the consultants had information that they could answer about the boards, but nobody knew more about the community than the people on this screen. And there was a lot of background and a lot of feedback that I know each and every person here kind of ended up being at a stand paired with a consultant, because they could answer, each had an ability to answer questions that the other could not. So it's been a while since we've done it. So I just wanted to throw out that reminder, because, somebody would say, well, why is that there? Why was this decision made? Or who put that there? And, you guys aren't necessarily going to have that background. So gosh, don't kill me for saying this, but I don't know what kind of volume we're going to get of people coming, but I would really feel a little more comfortable if we had some kind of dry run. And Kate, I know you guys do this all the time, and, obviously you've got all the experience in presenting the information and that you have. But everybody here should have a very vested interest and reason to be there on that Saturday too. So I'll just remind everybody that's here too, the expectation is you're going to help send this out, and you're going to get this out to your HOAs, and you're going to be bringing people, to the meeting as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Sure, those are great points. As everybody shows up, and if some of us are standing beside boards, we're the familiar faces of the community where people might be asking us the questions. To Mr. Fryer.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I wanted to piggyback on. Was our last community meeting, Kate, what we found was that a lot of the people look for us for the information. And Christine hit the nail right on the head. We need to be a dry run or something, kind of a run through, something that I've learned, in working with politics. When everybody's on the same page, you have a uniform message, it resonates. Not calling out any particular parties, but I can tell you, when you have a uniform message from top to bottom, you'll be amazed at how that message can get out to the masses. So if Tim and I are across the room, he should be saying the exact same things that I'm saying, with regards to the data, with regards to the information, with regards to whatever. Of course, he can put his own anecdotal spins on it, but in regards to the data and how the information is being presented, there should be consistency throughout. If there's any way, if we could do like a quote unquote cheat sheet where all of us could have that same information, where we could run back to that, because what I found was a lot of people were approaching me and they were asking me things that, because we didn't do the quote unquote run through, I wasn't very familiar with how to lay the information out. So that's what I think what Christine is saying is very important with respect to doing a run through, if not a day before, a few days before, and even a quick cheat sheet, so that we all have bullet points. Now, when I say the bullet points, I mean vague, because again, learning from politics, my colleagues on the other side, they're very vague, but they're vague enough that they intrigue people's minds and engagement. Not too, not too specific, but just enough to make people start processing and wanting to think, and then do their own investigative stuff. So I feel like it's important, to bring that kind of home. In the immortal words of Allen Iverson, practice. We're talking about practice. Yeah, we're talking about practice. I mean, so I think that's important, for us to try to have those talking points, so to speak, so that we're all on the same page as we lay this information out, kind of have a run through. So, I can look at Nick and I can look at Tim, and we all know, or Linwood, and we all know that we're going to be spouting the same quote unquote data. And we have a sense of what you, Kate, as a consultant, are trying to present as well, because I like to be informed. I don't like going into situations where I don't know what's happening, or I have bits and pieces of the information, because at the end of the day, I'm going to run into Nick at Five Guys, and Nick's going to ask me, hey, I saw you at that community meeting. What's going on with XYZ? These are my neighbors. These are my friends. So, the more knowledgeable I am about a situation, the better, of course.
And if we're good friends, we should be taking care of our own and making sure that they know to come out. So if we have good friends, we should make sure that they get an opportunity to recognize, as Christine says, to come at these. We've got to encourage them to come. We've got to bring them out, because that way they get educated. With that being educated, then more people are vested in this. And we're more sure which, if our direction's correct, and that everybody is doing what we want. And that's the whole point of these, and to make sure it's widely spread. Dan doesn't want to turn around and start, making a guess at it and have it come back and then find out nobody really wanted it because we didn't share it. So our job is to, make sure we bring it forward next.
So I think what we can do is convert what we presented tonight into, I'm going to call it a task force briefing book. And it's essentially kind of everything you've seen, with maybe a couple of additional bullets that have some of the numbers and we can get that put together for this week. And then if there's something that you guys see that you say, hey, I'm not really prepped for this, to be standing up in front of these boards with you, Kate, and in 2 weeks from now, then let's have some one-on-one briefings to do that. And I'm probably overstating what we can do here, but I'll let staff decide. But I think we can easily take what we've already done and turn it into a little more, so you have it tangible. If we could maybe have a couple of days this week to go ahead and add some additional information for you, so that, yeah, you've got the full understanding of what it is, what's being proposed, so that you can stand up next to me and our team and staff, and we are all on the same page. And if there's something, that's missing or concerning, we can kind of cover that between now and then. That'd be my recommendation. But Stephen, I didn't want to take over, so go ahead.
Yeah, that sounds great. The first thing that we'll need to do is have an idea for the number of task force members who plan to attend and who will be there. And with that, I think I think my first idea would be to see if there is an interest, and if everyone who plans to be there can commit to joining another meeting on July 10th, after or sometime within that week before I think it'll be the earliest the better, but to go over the handbook that Kate sends out. And from my own end, there's been so much that we talked about over the past, and of course, just knowing how the process goes. The main thing that I think the task force members should make sure that you are familiar with is that visioning statement that you all adopted, because that is really the basis of everything that we're here now. That's the biggest milestone that has been made, and that statement has been what we've used as our marching orders. That adopted statement has been what we've used as our marching orders to get to where we are now, where Kate and her team are working on concepts, and when we are going to the community, if there's and that again comes into the point where we start talking about form and building heights and everything like that versus a number of people who may be needed at this point. We were kind of trying to keep it at that level, the conversation at that level right now, to kind of establish, one, that this community visioning statement you all have adopted is really what the community is looking for, what we've missed, what they may think may need to be tweaked, but then also also how that relates to the concepts that the consultants are working on. But those are the things that are most important. We when we start talking about numbers too, the thing you have to think about is something that Graham mentioned earlier too. We're then going to have to start talking about schools. We're then going to have to start talking about parks, and that's all the stuff. When we have the numbers, and the numbers are, when we have the numbers, it's really not going to be up to the consultants to tell us where the schools go, where the parks go, and things like that. So that again is why, at this point, if you focus on the form, are we getting it right with the form? Sidewalks along, better sidewalks along Lorton Road. Are you okay with 10 stories in a certain place? If you're not, we can dial that down. But when you start targeting the things you really want, when you start talking about where the restaurants are going to go and where the cool places for people to hang out are going to go, that you start coming down like this, that's when we start spreading and going down in steps toward another neighborhoods. That's when we start looking at a possible option for the woods of Fairfax, like Linwood is talking about. And right now, we are at the point of kind of looking at the epicenters of these activity nodes and trying to see how much we can get there and what the community can live with. Again, that's why you don't really, if you open up the topic of numbers at this point with the community, that's really when you're going to need a lot more information, a lot more data that you probably don't want to try to answer, because then you're getting into those other questions of schools, parks, and things of that nature, stuff that is going to be up to other agencies of the county to help us figure out. So.
And I totally get that. My only point is I'm not bringing up numbers in the community. I guess what I'm trying to focus on is that the numbers seem to be held by the consultant, and the consultant is coming to the end of their stop. Is there enough time after this community meeting for the task force to disseminate those numbers with the consultant and have enough repetitive conversations? The numbers don't really need to be, I'm trying to segregate the numbers in the community versus the numbers in the task force, because that's what the task force has been asking for consistently for a long time. Why we've punted this community meeting for a long time is so that the task force members can have that more detailed conversation before we take it to the community. That was, maybe I'm wrong, but that was always my understanding of what was being said by the task force members. But show us how much it costs. Let the task force kind of hammer that through, knowing that the task force is representative of the community, so that before we take it to the community, we will have reviewed that data and at least feel comfortable with it before we're standing in front of a board trying to explain ourselves. And I know some people have jumped in here. Graham, you've been very patient.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've been tracking what everybody has been saying. I think that showing a percentage is a good idea. Mm-hmm. And I think making sure that the task force has an understanding of the proposed density level is critical. I would just strongly reiterate what Stephen just described, which is that getting, and what Kate said, which is getting the form right and getting the height level right and the land use mix right, and being able to go out to the community and say, we have this vision statement, we've adopted it. Here's what we see as kind of the initial run of this, and being able to say, is this about what you think? Is this? It's not about defending the numbers, and that's what we're not here to defend the numbers. Staff isn't here to defend the numbers yet. We haven't done our impact analysis yet. So if someone turns around and says, staff, what do you think about the numbers? We're going to say that's the next phase, and that's what we're going to do, and we'll come back to the community to talk about the numbers in greater detail, because we haven't looked at the trip generation, we haven't looked at the student yield generation, we haven't looked at urban park framework and what that would require in terms of the unit count relative to what's been proposed and what could be accommodated, right? So I just caution you, we can talk about the numbers, as the task force, and we can, describe them to the community in a certain way, but I think this point is so important, because if you chip away at the number too much, you're not going to get what you want. And focusing on, I think if we go into this, it's more about making sure that people know it's okay to not have an opinion about the number right now. And you're not in a position where you have to defend the number, because staff isn't going to defend it either at this stage. But there will be a point where we do that later on.
And I agree 100% with what both of you are saying. But when we talk about the next phase, is it important for the consultant to be here for the next phase? And maybe the answer is no, but it sounds like they might be departing prior to the next phase.
The thing we have to remember is the concepts that they will provide are conceptual. The concepts aren't going to tell you, what the exact use mix is, because there's going to have to be someone who comes in and shows interest in building to that, So it's similar to what was done for other studies like this. If you look at the Embark Richmond Highway study, those are the types of concepts that we're going to come away with, and we hope to build some sort of flexibility, whether it's to go higher, come down lower, spread out a little bit. That's what the target of the policy is going to be. But I think before we even get to a decision on what the numbers could be, you just want to be in a position where we have the input from the public on the form, because if you get to a point where regardless of how long Kate and Renaissance are with us, but if you get to a point where we've gone too far down that road and made too many assumptions that a certain form is going to be in place, and then we have to have the numbers to drive to that certain form, and then we take the numbers and the form to the community down the road. The community might be like, I don't know where this is coming from. These people aren't speaking for me, and the county definitely isn't speaking for me. And who are these consultants? That's where we can't get to.
Yeah, it's honestly, I'm starting to understand that from your all's perspective. And Graham made some really good points. You can't really just try to figure that out. I mean, it's gonna be evolving. It's an evolving piece. I guess we sort of anticipate, but however, the committee, I think, anticipated that it would see it, that it would understand it, is probably the disconnect. But I understand why we wouldn't now, if the way you describe it. But I wouldn't have thought it that way. My expectation wasn't that. I do still think it would be good for us to know what we're dealing with before we go walk it in and trying to, be our first time. That makes no sense. But Nick's question, which is I think I already know the answer to, which is the consultant going to be around long enough for us to work with to go to another level? And the answer is no, not under the current contract. So that would have to be something altogether different.
No,
So,
we're going to be working with you on that level. We're going to use the feedback from the community. The consultants will be here for the next 3.5 months, and they're going to work that out to you to get to that point that Nick is talking about, where there are numbers and concepts that really say what those numbers are. But before we get to those numbers and the concepts, but you aren't looking at the end of the concepts. The last concepts that the concepts that the community is going to see on July 10th is not the final concepts.
Sure.
This is a step in the direction of the form that needs to be done. And if the community says, hey, you guys got it right, that's when we get to this point of saying, okay, if we got it right, these are the numbers it's going to take to do this. And that's when we start looking at heights and spread,
Right.
things of that nature. And Kate did show some numbers. Kate and Becca showed some numbers. I think at the last task force meeting, where they had a list of different things. It had different building heights, how much, the types of parks, the design of the different parks you can have, and things of that nature. And then it went up in height, and you could get more park space. You could get going from pocket parks to local parks to, community serving parks and things of that nature. So I think that's where that's probably where we would be comfortable with showing, you showing the numbers. But at the same time, when you're showing those numbers, you can't have a concept. There's a chart with the numbers in it. It kind of talks about what the different benefits and trade-offs may be with the type of form you're looking at. But the thing that they can't do is they can't, as the numbers change for education and the numbers change for transportation and everything like that, they're not going to be with us changing concepts as if we know exactly what's going to be built at each of these sites when there's not a developer involved. That's what they can't do. That's not what their contract has them doing. So.
Sure, and that's fine. And that, I mean, my initial comment, I guess, was that I don't think we are prepared to talk numbers to the community on the July 15th meeting, and perhaps not even percentages if we're talking about kind of, elevations and illustrations and just kind of general looks and so forth, and get that feedback. I just want to make sure that, after that, there's enough time, given that the consultant is the one bringing the data, that we have enough time to talk about that as kind of a task force, before they leave the room. Hopefully we can get all of the questions answered, because we haven't had any opportunity to review, or even have any general idea. I mean, you could throw a number just of me saying we need 5,000 rooftops or 50,000 rooftops, probably somewhere in between. I mean, I think it's something the task force wants to be able to, hash back and forth, so that we have our own, opinions about it before we go forth to the public.
Nick, would you be okay with us having a time? Maybe it's that Monday that Steve suggested, which was July the 10th, or some other time that week. I know that everyone's really busy, but to be able to have that check-in, because we can send you the numbers. That's not a problem, but just in terms of being able to advertise it to the community, make sure that they know about the Lorton Task Force meeting, if we want to have one, we'll just need to have a time. So if we do decide that we need to, pull the trigger, have a discussion about it, that we can do it. And so maybe it's the 10th, or maybe it's another date that's up to the task force. But it'd just be a good idea, to think about it. We don't have to do it right this second, but maybe we could do it afterwards, after the meeting, just to pick a date so that we have something that we can work towards.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I have a conflict on July 10th. That's normally our HOA meeting, and I've done this to everybody once. I'll need to double check that to make sure it's not that day as well. But yeah, I think it would be good to have a dry run as to, if we as a task force are standing up there next to boards, that we fully understand them and are prepared to talk about them from those angles.
What we could do, maybe our team could put out a suggestion, to the task force about a couple of different dates that we can go with what seems to work.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. I don't have any other comments. We're good. We'll work with staff. We'll get this. We'll get something that everybody's comfortable with going to the public with. So thank you all for all the comments. And yeah, I think we've got good suggestions on the table. I think we can go to the public, and I think we'll give you certainly more information so that you have that briefing book, because we want you standing next to us, because you are the experts in your own community. So it'll be good to have you there.
Okay. So Graham, we still have hands up. Are we all good here? There we go. Okay, any other questions or comments? We're good to go on July 15th then, and then Steve, do you want to throw around a couple of dates for a dry run?
I think one thing that we want to do first is make sure we have a head count for how many task force members
Sure
want to be there on Saturday and want to be in a position of interacting and answering questions, because it's kind of like what Kate said. She can send the information out, and if once everyone's had a chance to look at it, who's going to be there. If a group meeting doesn't work, we can schedule, staff can schedule like 30 minutes here and there, with smaller groups too, if that's what's needed. We want to make sure that we're accommodating you all too, so we have as many task force members in place. I don't really want to throw out a date right now. It would have to be during the week of the meeting. But if I throw out a date right now, I don't want any task force members saying, "Oh, I'm not going to show up Saturday because I can't make the dry run." So, we can make it work for you all when we have the numbers. And then, like I said, if it's groups of, if it's one person, or if it's a group of 3, 4, 5 or whatever, we can, there may need to, basically what I'm saying is there may need to be more than one dry run, because I don't want people to be discouraged if I throw a date out now and then they say they, like you have an engagement on that Monday, if that works for everyone else, we can still hold a meeting that Monday and then have a dry run with you on your time.
Sure. So maybe we can go just around everybody here, and then we'll get to the ones who are not able to attend tonight, but I will be there on July 15th, walking around. Wendy?
Yes, I'll be there on the 15th.
Catherine?
I will not. I'm out of town.
Walter?
Yes, I plan to be there. And remind me of the times again.
It's 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yes, I'll be there.
Dale?
I have it on my calendar. I will be there.
Mr. Sargent? Got to unmute, please, sir. Is that intentional?
I'll be there, but I'm going to let Walter do all the talking.
Fair enough.
Tim, I was planning on you doing all the talk.
We'll talk later.
Linwood?
I'm planning on being there, and the only conflicts I might have that others here wouldn't have also for this follow-up meeting are the second, third, and fourth Wednesday. Other than that, I should be pretty flexible for a potential meeting.
Tim Reiser?
I'm good.
Ahmad?
Yeah, I will not be there, unfortunately. I'm currently out of town on work assignment.
Sure. No worries. Steve, did you get all of those?
Yes, I have a group here tonight. I have Wendy, Walter, Dale, Tim Sargent, Linwood, and Tim Reiser.
Yeah.
And if you want, either the co-chairs or I can send something out to the members who weren't able to attend tonight and copy the co-chairs just to see who else may be there, and just give them the rundown on how we'll be scheduling the meetings for that week. So.
Right. Okay. So Steve, can you maybe email the others that were not here tonight to see if they would be able to participate?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how many boards there are, or do we need a task force person per board, or?
and just the I was just thinking about the term dry run because it's going to be an open forum, an open format.
Mhm.
There's really no script, so there's not really anything to run run through other than maybe the prep package that Kate indicated.
Sure.
Because there's going to be some questions that are probably asked where staff and even the consultants are going to have to tell members of the community, hey, we haven't worked on this. This is a great idea. Could you give us your contact information and we'll get back to you. When you do things in this way, you kind of present information, and it's not really so much as a listening session as opposed to an interactive session. There's going to be some things are going to come up that none of us have thought about, at least in the framework of Lorton visioning. So they're being fully prepared, take some of the fun out of it, I guess.
One thing I'll just say,
Stephen, that's my exact response and answer to everyone in the community.
I'll get back
Give me
to
your
you.
contact number. We get back to you.
Here's my card. Take my card. Yeah.
Good idea.
Wait a minute. This is Walter Clark.
Yeah. No, mine says Tim Sargent.
Oh. Well, the other thing preparing for this meeting I'd suggest is maybe some consistent responses as to why this is fluid. So we're all on the same page of saying, here are the variables that contribute to the fluid numbers.
Yeah, that's great.
I know the last one, I think it was Megan who said, Nick, go stand in front of the one for parks. And I'm like, okay. So I wandered over there looking at the thing going, okay, what am I doing here? Just a moment to familiarize myself with what board am I standing in front of. So I can
and where's Linwood?
Linwood,
just get over here.
From previous, task force experience, one of the things when we saw, and I can't remember which phase of the process, we saw some rather large dimension, multifamily type, high density buildings. And we really didn't discuss numbers, but we saw these designs and we really didn't explain why they were the way they were. So if we can help people understand what influences design, that'll be helpful too.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Nothing else. So Steve, if you can get with the other task force members to see who would be available and have them put together kind of how many boards and maybe who would be standing in front of which board, and get some information kind of emailed around to everybody. And then if we want to do a dry run, I don't think it'll take that long. It's just a bit of a familiarization before we walk in the room, standing in front of a board. Keith Shovelin, you have your hand up there. Do you have a question?
Just a quick question. Do you know if there's going to be anything else happening at the library that day? Because like when BPRA had their pop-up there, they didn't know that there was going to be a children's book festival at the exact same time.
Well, we have been given we have the run of the library and some space on the outside of the library. The place that I'd originally inquired about, the spot that I originally inquired about is the multi-purpose room, which is the room behind the entrance. I was told that that's already reserved, but if that group were to cancel, we can take that space also. And we also have use of I think the conference room and two of the small meeting rooms also. So I was thinking if we wanted to have if there was a loop video or like a loop presentation, like PowerPoint presentation with audio, we could probably get a TV set up in that conference room, and it could be open to small groups, different small groups at a time. That's just one of the things I thought about. But we know what our space, we know the space we have, and we know that the space that the library has given us, we've been told that it's free and clear. So there's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my HOA meeting is July 10th and the 11th is the Federation meeting. So I would only be available the 12th, 13th or 14th myself.
And there may also, I mean, since like you were saying, and it may be best then to kind of just work with groups and seeing what times they could schedule rather than just saying, hey, we're going to do this one meeting at 6 o'clock in the evening and everything, because there may be some time that we can do a session for a large group during the daytime, and then just do a smaller session with someone else, with anyone else who needs to do it at nighttime. I'm kind of thinking about how Graham did a series of open houses. Sometimes he had two at a time, and this was with community members coming in cold to learn the information. So there's flexibility to handle it in different ways, and it doesn't have to be just a scheduled night meeting or anything like that.
Yeah. If you want to kind of map out like who's going to be in front of which board, and then just to email that around, and then if anybody has any questions, they could probably just set up an individual time.
Yep.
And maybe just with you probably have all the answers that they would need anyway.
Yeah, Kate will train us up good.
So. Yeah, just what's going to be on the board and what the subject matter of each board is and who's going to be designated to be in front of which board. That's probably sufficient.
All right.
Just a note, if you consider planning any later in the week than July 10th, Walter and I both have planning commission meetings on Wednesday, the 12th, and committee meetings on Thursday, the 13th.
Okay. Yeah, again.
What are you doing Friday night? I'm just joking.
Nothing, but I can get out of it.
Sure. Yeah. I think get around the information, and we'll see what if people feel that they need a bit of a prep talk with you, Steve.
All right.
Okay. We've gone over our time. Does anybody have anything else for this evening, or we can call it a day? Not seeing anything. We may adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.